So we're going to start, and I'm going to forewarn everyone that a lot of what you're going to hear is very graphic and very disturbing. But equally as important, I want you to know it's okay to laugh. So I'm going to share with you all how this very moment came to be. A few years ago, I was traveling on a flight for business, and I hit a ton of turbulence. And I said to myself, my God, if something happened to me, my children would not know where I came from. So the moment I landed, I set out on this focus to find out how I could document my story in a book. But I never wanted the book to go public. I just needed 5 copies for my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. See, the story that I grew up with, there was a problem I had. I was ashamed of my background. I had a problem with the way I grew up, and I never wanted anyone to know that. See, I never wanted anyone to know I was born a welfare baby. That's the original bill that Mike was talking about. As you see, back in 71, we weren't so politically correct. We actually let you know, okay, welfare baby. The other thing I want to point out to you there is if you look, you can see it says MISS. So we let you know, unwed mother, single, welfare baby. So when I found this bill, as Mike said, I Googled Miami Valley Hospital. I said, I'll be damned, it's still there. So, made a copy of the bill, got a cashier's check, mailed it in. Now the joke was, I said to my wife, I gotta imagine when they open this thing up, they're gonna go, damn, 71, you're a little bit late, aren't you? The thing that I want you to notice as well in there is the last name. My mother's last name is McCormick. My last name is McCormick. See, when my mother went into labor, she had to walk herself to the hospital because my father was nowhere around. See, my father was a black pimp in the 1970s. And I want to be very clear when I say this. I don't know where our society went left and turned the word pimp into a positive. Pimp my ride, pimp my apartment. No, my father was a real 1970s pimp. He put women on a street corner, they sold their bodies, he took every dollar. Now along the way, he also managed to father 23 children. I'm one of 23. I rarely saw my father as a child, but when I did, it was like a solar eclipse. It was magical for a little boy. There were 3 guarantees I knew would come when I would see my father. Number 1, my father would always tell us this story about the only difference between him and his product and service and the CEO of Budweiser was that our government decided to make the CEO of Budweiser legal. And I was a kid, I never knew what he meant by this, but he would always share this to us. Only difference between me and the CEO of Budweiser, our government made him legal. Okay, Dad, great. That was number 1. I'd always hear that story. Number 2, I knew when my dad picked me up, I was going to be left in the car for long periods of time while my dad was in some house doing God knows what. I knew that you never knew what to expect with my father. You didn't know if the house was going to be raided and you watch your father walk out in handcuffs. That was number 2. Number 3, I knew at the ages of 6, 7, and 8 that left alone, I was going to be sexually molested by one of my father's prostitutes. I knew that she was going to force me to have oral sex on her, and if I did it wrong, she was going to slap me in the face and punch me in the head and tell me to do it right. I was 6 years old. What does do it right mean? But I never told anyone because I knew if my mother found out, she'd never let me see my father again. Now my mother, she grew up an orphan. in a 1950s institutional orphanage. In fact, it was called Ohio Soldiers and Sailors Orphanage in Xenia. When my mother turned 17 years old, they gave her a small suitcase, $20, and they said, "Good luck to you. There's the world." Now here's what's important. I said to you I had the same last name as my mother, McCormick. The problem that I have is to this day, I don't know where that last name comes from. My mother was given that last name in the children's home, but she has no clue where or why we have this last name. So I have people to this day that like to joke and say, "Oh, wow, are you related to the McCormick Spice family?" Maybe. Can you let them know if I am? So I got a little bit better looking over the years, I like to think. And this is where we're going to get into the part of Dayton, Ohio that I experienced. Growing up mixed race in Dayton, Ohio in the 70s was brutal. Black people didn't like me because I was half white. White people didn't like me because I was half black. I was constantly referred to as zebra, Oreo cookie, chocolate vanilla swirl, my favorite, color confused, as if I had a choice. It was worse given the fact that we were poor, U.S. poor. In fact, my mother and I used to joke that we were so poor we couldn't afford the O and the R, we were just po. We never had these four things at the same time: electricity, food, water, or money. We were always missing one, and in most cases two. We wore bread bags on our feet in the wintertime because we had holes in our shoes. When I went to school, I was that kid that hung back after recess when everyone went outside to play, and I pulled trash out of the trash can to eat because I knew when I got home there was nothing to eat. Growing up for me, mixed race, it was hard, it was harsh, but what my mother had to experience raising a mixed race son in Dayton, Ohio in the 70s is actually what hurt me the most. I don't know how many of you remember these. These are food stamps. Back in the 70s, this was paper money. They gave you these food stamps. It's not like today. Today there's this debit card or whatever. No one knows if you have an Amex Black card or if you have a debit card. No, you were shamed back in the 70s. I'm going to share a few stories with you about being on welfare, being in public housing. Back in the 70s, there was a time period where my mother and I came home to the public housing, nice word for projects, and we found all our belongings on the curb. And we looked down and we're wondering, why are all our belongings, the few we have, out here on the curb? And the building manager comes running out, he gets in my mother's face, and he says, "No nigger lovers can live here." Now here's the damnedest thing. Black people lived in the building, white people lived in the building. They didn't want mixed race. To this day, I don't know where we went or what we did, but I remember sitting on that curb with my mother crying because at 5 years old, I realized we don't have any money, we don't have any family, and we don't have any place to go. What are we going to do? On another occasion, my mother-in-law and I were waiting in line for our monthly allotment of food stamps. You had to go to the service center or wherever, and you had to wait in line, sometimes 3, 4, 5 hours to get your allotment of food stamps. On one occasion, we're standing in line, and this older white lady looks down at me. She looks up at my mom, she looks down at me, and she spit in my mom's face, and she called her a nigger lover. Now I'm laughing because every time I tell this story, I still get a kick out of the fact of, let me get this straight. You're in the same broke-ass line as us, but you're better than us because my mother has a mixed-race child. What wasn't funny to me was the fact that my mother had to stand there humiliated, tears coming down her face, wipe the spit off of her face, and she had to stand there for that free handout because she couldn't leave that line because she had to feed her mixed-race son. These food stamps have some very harsh memories for me. My mother ended up facing welfare fraud and facing time in prison. So I got shipped to Houston, Texas to live with my father. This is what I arrived to at 9 years old. The hourly rate Surrey House Motel. My father was living there with his prostitute and my 6-month-old half-sister. 2 days after I arrived, my father said, "We'll be back." And he and the prostitute left. And they left me with my 6-month-old half-sister. 5 minutes after they left, of course, she's 6 months old, she starts crying. I'm 9 years old. I pick her up. Shh, it's okay. It's okay. We're 15 minutes into this. She's crying. I'm thinking to myself, okay, what do? I don't know how to change a diaper. I don't know how to make a bottle. Do babies even eat whole food? This was the first time I had ever been away from my mother for more than a weekend. We're 30 minutes into this. My sister's still crying. I'm frustrated. I threw my 6-month-old sister across the room. The minute she left my hands, I thought, oh my God, what kind of monster throws a baby? Fortunately for me and her, she landed on the couch. She was okay. I run over, I pick her up, I'm consoling her, she's screaming, I'm crying, I don't know what to do. The prostitute shows up. She tells me to get out. Oh, she's got a man with her. Time to do business. Oh, take your sister with you. I held my baby sister in that parking lot in July in Houston, Texas, sweltering heat, sweltering humidity. She had on nothing but a diaper. I'm sweating, she's sweating. I just want to go home. I want my mom. My mother ended up not going to prison, and shortly thereafter she moved to Houston. Well, my dad decided he was going to take the pimp game back to Dayton, Ohio. So he packed us all up. We went back to Dayton. But the problem was, he didn't tell my mother we were leaving. We get back to Dayton, and my mother has no clue where I am. I could be in Miami. I could be in LA. She has no clue where I am. Once we get back to Dayton, we bounce around from house to house. We had so many addresses, I can't remember one of them. By this time, my father and his prostitute had 3 children, my 3 brothers and sisters. How many of you have seen Forrest Gump? Okay, everybody. Do you remember the house where Jenny goes back and she sees the house and she takes her shoes off and she throws it at it? This is my Jenny house. My dad came home one day and he said, hey, I'm going to England. And he left. He was out. He left. Literally, almost the same afternoon, the prostitute says, oh, hey, I'm going to run up and get a pack of cigarettes. I'll be back. But pause there. I forgot to tell you, the prostitute was a horrific heroin addict. So she left. One day turned into 2, 2 turned into 3. We're running out of food. So I tell my 4-year-old sister, hey, you watch the 3-year-old and the 2-year-old. I'm going to go down to the store and I'm going to steal some food so we can eat. Told a 4-year-old that. I go down to the store, I steal food, I come back. The moment I open the door, it hit me. Oh, we don't have any diapers for the 2-year-old. So I took my 2-year-old brother and I sat him on the toilet. He's crying, I'm crying. And I said, hey man, here's how it's going down. Until something comes out, you're not moving. And that's how you learn to potty train. 3 days turned into 5, 5 turned into 7. It's February in Dayton. It hits me that my middle sister, it's her birthday. What are we gonna do? So I go back down to the store, steal some more food. I'm convinced at this point they know I'm stealing food. And I had to figure out, what are we gonna do for my sister's birthday? Of all the things I could have stolen, my half-brothers and sisters, they're mixed race also, I stole a pack of Oreos. We came back, I took the tops off of the Oreos, we put 3 candles in there, and that's how we celebrated her birthday. 9 days turned into 11. Long story short, this woman was gone for 3 weeks. I explain to people all the time when I put stress into perspective. It was February in Dayton, Ohio. I had my 3 brothers and sisters, and I'll be damned if I was going to leave them. The greatest stress I have ever faced in life to this day is wondering every hour, are they going to disconnect the electricity on us and we're going to freeze? Are they going to disconnect the water and we're not going to have anything to drink and we're not going to be able to take a bath? Every day, every hour, I lived with that stress. When their mother came home, of course, that was their mom, they were excited to see her. They run up to her, they're doing love, I stood back, I didn't say anything. Once everything calmed down, I took all little 12-year-old and myself and I went up to her and I said, where the F have you been? This woman punched me so hard, I fell to the ground, she kicked me, she beat me, my ear's bleeding. I jumped up, I went upstairs, I jumped out of the window, I ran away. When I got brought back, the second beating was worse than the first. By the grace of God, one of my uncles, my dad's brothers, picked me up the next day, and he took me to another one of my dad's girlfriend's houses. Now, for the first week, everything was great. I was eating. She even bought me new clothes. I had lunch money. But then the weekend rolled around. Oh, she's a horrific alcoholic. And I'm looking a little too much like my father right now. She starts to beat me. I'm tired of getting beat. I fight back. She calls the police. I go to juvenile. Pause. My mother's in Texas and doesn't know where I am. My father is in England, and literally only God knows where he is. I'm in juvenile, and no one knows where I am. My aunt picked me up out of juvenile, and that night at her house, I heard her and my uncle having a conversation on how they couldn't afford to feed me. So I took my little suitcase, packed up all my belongings, and I went and slept on the bus stop. 13 years old, I'm homeless. But every day I went to school because I knew I could get a free meal. I knew somebody buy me lunch, I knew I could eat. So like a stray dog, I went to where I could get some food. But every day I went with my little suitcase because that was all the belongings I had. There was a little boy that teased me every day. I snapped one day. That kid went into the hospital. I went back to juvenile. I was in juvenile 3 different times. And on the last occasion when I was in juvenile, I would so much like to meet this gentleman. There was a corrections officer that came up to me. He said, son, come here. If you ever come back here again, you're going to man prison. Now, I'm 48 years old. Now, I don't know what it is with the term man prison that does not sound appealing to me. Needless to say, I never went back to juvenile, and I never went to man prison, and I'm never going to man prison. At the age of 15, I ended up getting reunited with my mother in Texas. When I was reunited with my mother, she took me and enrolled me in high school. I was 15 years old. The guidance counselor was putting the classes together for me, and she said, "Oh, here are your classes." And she said a word at the age of 15 I had never heard before. She said, "You're supposed to be in geometry." I had never heard the word geometry. But at 15 years old, I had never had a chicken breast, and I didn't know they would deliver pizza to your house. Needless to say, they put me in these classes. 6 weeks later, I come back, "Oh, this kid's not too bright." My mother had me tested, and I was testing on a 5th or 6th grade level. Graduation rolls around, I don't have enough credits, I don't graduate. I had to go to summer school and take remedial math, remedial English to get my high school diploma. Now, many of you in here would call that a GED. Damn it, it says high school diploma, I got a high school diploma. When I came home with my high school diploma, I was proud, showed my mom. She says, "Great, time to get a job." Where's the celebration? Get a job. Of all the places I could have gone to get my first job, I could have gone to Walmart, I could have gone to Target, Burger King, McDonald's. Nah, my first job was at Po Folks. I can't make that up. My mother and I spent our whole lives joking about being so poor we couldn't afford the O and the R, and I got a job at Po Folks. My first job was cleaning toilets. I hated it. But I remember one day walking in and I said, "Okay, if this is my job, I'm going to have the cleanest toilets in San Antonio, Texas. I'm going to have the cleanest toilets in the country." And at that point forward, everything I did, I was going to be the best at it. I've been fortunate to go on, and in my previous role, I was the president of a software company that we scaled from 13 people with me sitting in the storage closet to over 100 people, multi-million-dollar company with offices throughout Texas and one in Monterrey, Mexico. And I don't write code. I am now the CEO of a publishing company, and we have been so fortunate that last year we were named the #1 company culture in America. We were named the #1 place to work in Austin. We were named the #2 best place to work in Texas. But here's the damnedest thing. I'm the CEO of a publishing company, and I can't tell you an adverb from an adjective. I damn sure can't spell, so thank God I'm not the one writing the books. In fact, I still want to meet the man or woman who created spell check, because good God, you've been influential in my career. I've been fortunate that I've done well for myself. I self-taught myself. Where's my CFO? I taught myself CapEx, OpEx, balance sheets, income statements, EBITDA, all self-taught. I even managed to teach myself how to take $100 and turn it into 8 figures in the stock market. Unfortunately, my father never got to see any of that. See, my father passed away 3 years ago, and it was my first time back to Dayton in 30 years. When my little brother called me and reached out and he said, "Hey, our dad passed away," I was very, okay, do I go back? I haven't been back to Dayton. I haven't talked to my dad in 30 years. I'm happy I went back for 2 reasons. One, I got this really cool picture. This was at my dad's funeral. Those are real 1970s pimps and hustlers. And I don't care what anybody says, you gotta love my man that is in all red from top to bottom. You gotta love the man that's got on a pink shirt and pink shoes to match. Someone asked me one time, they said, JT, why do you celebrate that picture? Well, because those gentlemen came up to me and they told me stories about when I was a kid. They remembered me. They told me stories about my father, things I didn't know. So that's one reason I was happy I went back to my father's funeral. The other reason is I realized my dad did 3 things for me. See, when we lived in Houston, Texas, during all that chaos, I don't know if he knew what he was doing, but my father at 10 years old drove me through one of the most exclusive areas in the country. It's called River Oaks. 10, 15, $25 million homes. These homes were bigger than the projects I lived in, and only one family lived there. What that did for me was show me possibility. It showed me what could be possible, because outside of Dayton, I had never seen anything else. So I'm always thankful that my dad showed me possibility. Number 2, when I was standing in front of those toilets and I said to myself, okay, whatever I do in life, I'm going to be the very best at it. It took me years to admit this. My dad taught me that lesson. He said to me one time, I don't care what you do in life, be the best at it. If you are going to be a street sweeper, be the best street sweeper in the world. And that stuck with me. And the third lesson, and this is a harsh one, but I still thank him for it. On one weekend where my dad had me for the weekend, we were at Liberal's grocery store. I don't know if anybody remembers this place. We were at Liberal's. We're walking through the frozen food aisle, probably about 8 years old, and this little girl walks by and she goes, "Hi, JeVon." I didn't say anything. Just kind of put my head down real shy. And I feel this blow to the back of my head. I fall on the ground, my nose is bleeding, I get picked up, and I'm pinned up against the frozen food section. And my dad looks at me and says, I don't care who it is, you say hello, be kind, and show respect to everyone. Didn't we just finish picking up money from prostitutes? But the lesson stuck. And to this day, I say hello, I am kind, and I am respectful to everyone. In fact, I am far more respectful and kind to service industry people than I am C-suite executives, CEOs, multimillionaires. You got enough people kissing up to you. See, when the surgeon goes and performs surgery and he comes out and he tells everybody, oh, the surgery went well, everyone gives the surgeon love. Oh, thank you, doctor, thank you. Everyone gives the registered nurse, the RN, they give the registered nurse love because of her bedside manner. Oh, thank you, thank you. Why don't we give the same love to the person who cleaned the room? Why don't we give the same love to the person who cleans the restrooms? Because I can tell you this, let the trash overflow. Let the tools not be sterilized when the surgeon gets ready to operate. Oh, now all of a sudden, the service people mean something. So I'm kind, I'm respectful, and I say hello to everyone. As I said, my dad didn't get to see any of that. And I've often been asked, would you have liked your dad to have seen your accomplishments? And it didn't really bother me that he didn't. And then last year, this magazine came out. It was a leadership magazine about CEOs. You have up here 4-star general, the ex-director of the CIA, 4-star General Petraeus, the former Heisman Trophy winner Bo Jackson, the billionaire hedge funder Leon Cooperman, some guy down here in the corner named JT McCormick. But here's what I really want you to pay attention to. The guy above me is the CEO of Budweiser. I will not lie to you. I cried when I saw this, and I said to myself, well played, Dad, well played. I very much would have liked him to have seen that. Of everything I've accomplished, of everything I'll go on to accomplish in life, my greatest accomplishment, oh, you just took my slides, is this right here. It's my family. I've got 4 kids, I don't have 23. I've got my wife, and I got to point something out here. You've heard the saying that behind every good man is a great woman. And I hate that phrase because my wife's never been behind me. My wife's been by my side the whole time. When I took my vows, my wife was standing by my side. My wife has supported me through the ups and downs, scaling companies. My wife has accepted me in all the baggage that came with me, mixed race or not. So behind, I don't do. So if I'm a good man, I've got an even greater woman standing by my side. I'll leave you all with this. And if you don't remember anything else from today, I ask that you remember the next 5 minutes. I'm often asked, okay, JT, how'd you do it? How'd you overcome all the adversity? How'd you make it through all the obstacles and challenges? And it really comes down to 2 things for me. Right now, we live in a society where the phrase "fell fast" is popular, it's celebrated. To hell with fell fast. I've spent my whole life trying to learn faster. See, we all make mistakes in life. The goal is to learn, grow, and not repeat those mistakes. I wasn't always great in relationships. Until I met my wife, I was horrible. Couldn't hold a relationship. I was a monster. In my finances, made $1 million, lost it all. I was horrible. But the goal is to learn from your mistakes. So I don't do fell fast. We all make mistakes. The goal is to learn, grow, and not repeat those mistakes. Who wants the surgeon to show up and say, hey, right before surgery when we're going to fail fast? No, I do not do fail fast. The last piece, most important. I refuse to be a victim. See, I can't change that my father was a pimp. I can't change that I don't know where my last name comes from or that my mother was an orphan. I can't change that prostitute sexually molested me. Oh, but what I figured out is I can change the next hour, day, week, month, and year. So I refuse to be a victim. All I focus on is what can I accomplish? And I do my best to use my past experiences to benefit me as I move forward. I'll close out with this. When I first spoke with Sharon and Mike, they said, would you come back to Dayton? I said, hey, after my dad's funeral, I made a promise on the plane looking out of the window, I am never coming back to Dayton. Dayton didn't hold very good memories for me. I didn't want to ever come back to Dayton. Then leading up to this, I took some time to reflect, and I realized, wow, Dayton taught me resiliency. Dayton taught me how to work through any type of stress. Dayton taught me how to make it through chaos. So no matter where I am in this world, no matter where I live, no matter what I go through in life, I will always, always be Dayton strong. Thank you all. Thank you, sir.